Spoilerin Time, folks. This is the show where we take all that good information on Cordkillers that we've learned about boxes and streaming services, and we put it to good use and watch some stuff and talk about it. But when we talk about it, we don't want to avoid spoilers anymore. That's why it's called Spoilerin Time. I'm Tom Merritt. Brian Brushwood out this week, but our inveterate producer, Bryce Castillo, is with us. Thank you, Bryce.
Hi, I'm here. I'm happy to be here. Big week for Spoilerin Time.
Yeah, so we will not be doing a Deadwood since Brian's not here, but we will keep up to date on Counterpart, so episode 3 of this season, first season. We'll talk about the first couple episodes of Altered Carbon, which dropped on Netflix Friday, and the big one, the Cloverfield Paradox, which unexpectedly dropped on Netflix in the middle of the Super Bowl yesterday. It actually became available for viewing immediately after.
Yeah, let's start with the Cloverfield Paradox. I really like a lot of that movie.
Here's how I feel about that movie. First 20 minutes, building enjoyment.
Solid.
Like, introducing me. Oh, we're not going to stay in that word. We're going to go to space. We're going to be on the space. Oh, I love this. She's going to be up there. He's going to be down there.
Yeah.
I'm in. I'm all in. Let me meet the crew. This is Alien. I don't care. It's awesome. From there, like first 20, 30 minutes, it's just a slow decline.
It is. Because
like there wasn't any particular moment that killed it for me.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't like the eye-rolling moment where I was like, oh my gosh. But it just never quite built on what it had promised.
Do you think it's because there's not an antagonist in Cloverfield Paradox?
Well, Hamilton is set up to be the protagonist.
Right.
And then I guess...
or I guess a better question is...
what's her name? Jensen?
Jensen, yeah.
Is obviously the antagonist.
I guess
or is she? I think you may be onto something there, because I want to say, oh no, but she's the antagonist. The antagonist is keeping them there.
But she's not in that role until the last half hour.
Exactly.
Of the movie.
You don't find out that's her role until much too late.
Yeah. Though I also think maybe a lot of this movie. So I talked about this. Oh man. Okay. I'm not going to spoil this, but I'm going to bring it up as an example. Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams came out on Amazon, and that show has a lot of supernatural elements to it. A lot of just, hey, I don't know, this is the situation you're in, buddy. Which was off-putting to me because Black Mirror just come out, and Black Mirror is very like horror with realism, and I think I went into Cloverfield feeling the exact same way of like, I don't understand why half of this is like, it felt like Paranormal Activity, where we just like assume, oh no, the time and space is fighting back, and that's why the ship is eating this man.
Yeah, that's a kind of a typical J.J. Abrams mystery box thing. So I didn't let it bother me the first couple times. Like, why did she show up in the wall?
Right.
I don't know. She just did, because alternate universes.
Right. Maybe they phased into her weird, or...
Yeah, exactly. It leaves it to you as an exercise to go, oh, well, when they popped in to that solar system, they passed through the other one and she got snagged.
Yeah.
Not that any of that's actually in the movie, but that's how I'm putting it together in my head. Yeah.
But then it's like, no, there's like an Abbott and Costello bit where the ship is trying to gnaw on this dude's arm for a few minutes.
That was never explained. Yeah.
No idea what's going on.
When the guy from It Crowd lost his arm, and his arm was able to communicate.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's another arm. His arm got eaten, but it's a different arm.
So the other version of him's arm also got eaten, but still works.
And can be controlled. It's, oof.
I mean, again, I get it. J.J. Abrams, I don't need to look too closely.
Yeah.
But that one really got me like, wait, why did the ship try to eat him? I don't understand. It's one thing if it's like, oh, it's because things have been phasing in and out all day. No, it's the only time it happens.
Yeah. It's like the same with the gyro and the worms and stuff. At that point, I felt like, oh, is everyone going to die because stuff has magically appeared inside of them as well?
Well, that one I actually felt a little better not much, a little bit better about, because we had Lady in the Wall, right?
Sure.
So it's like, oh, things could end up in other things. We've set at least a precedent for that. And actually, I when he said the worms are gone, I was like, oh, the worms are in the Russian guy. Like, I was like, that's what's going on. That's why we see the little flippity flip on his stuff, temple. And then when they said cut him open, I immediately was like, the gyroscope's going to be inside him. Because when they couldn't find the gyroscope, I was like, oh, it's somewhere else, like the Lady in the Wall. Like, yeah. But again, not enough precedent setting for the unexplainable. Yeah. Like, you should be showing me all kinds of weird things stuck in weird places that don't matter, so that I'm going, oh, well, I wonder if the gyroscope's somewhere like that too.
Yeah, it was just a little. It was the middle mushy ground of like, there's a lot of unexplained stuff happening, but not so much that it can all be a part of this bigger idea.
Also, I just didn't get sold, and maybe this is just me. I was not sold that Hamilton would not care that she was also on the alternate Earth. I get, like, she would want to see her kids.
Yeah.
And I sort of accept, though I want to warn them not to buy the defective battery.
But is that the thing you had to do?
Like, I wanted a line from her to say, like, look, I know it's going to be weird and I know it's not my family, but I have to do this. Because the stakes were so much higher of like, no, but you'll never actually be with your real husband. You'll never actually return to your real Earth. And they hadn't set her up as that desperate that she didn't care.
Yeah. And the reveal about the fire was fine, I guess. But it was like right when she was making this big character development of.
Yeah. I didn't understand if I'd missed that in the opening car conversation.
I guess because when she starts off in the space center, the space station, she's watching video of her kids that we hadn't seen.
Yeah, but they also hadn't set us up to be in an empty house, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to hit me over the head and show her crying looking at an empty crib or anything, but give me some indication.
I think the general action and the thriller elements of it are pretty good. Right? Like, oh, we gotta disconnect the thing. We gotta try it. We can only do it so many times. You know, oh, we figured out how to do it. There's all this weird, impossible science stuff, whatever. But it was just a little jumbled up.
Yeah. I think the biggest example of that is, why did her husband meet the little girl? And take her to the shelter that looks like 10 Cloverfield Lane, but apparently is not, because it doesn't have any of the same stuff inside.
And why is that his sole thing? Like, we don't get enough context of how it is on Earth to understand how bad it really is.
Well, I think you're supposed to pick that up from the other two movies. That's the only way. That's the only explanation. Because I was expecting
see the silhouette of like the Cloverfield
that
monster,
girl to turn out to be someone important, or the place he's in. John Goodman walk in, at the end of the movie.
Hey, I
was expecting something to come out of that. Nothing comes out of that other than setting him up. I mean, first of all, the only thing that comes out to following his story at all is so he can yell, "Tell her not to come back. She shouldn't come back," right?
Yeah.
That's all we get.
The only reason.
We could have not followed him and got the same thing, right?
It would have been more impactful. It just didn't have any of the rest of his scenes, and it's just him at the end in a bunker with a little blonde girl saying, "Don't come back."
Why he picks up the blonde girl, I got no explanation for, because, I mean, we already knew he was a sympathetic character. You don't need to have him do something nice to prove that.
Yeah.
And she doesn't provide anything
to
the story.
Mm-hmm. And I don't understand what his relationship is to this hospital. And I don't know whether,
I thought he just worked there. I thought he was a doctor.
I guess so, but he gets a text saying, "Don't come in. We're crazy right now."
Well, yeah, because monsters.
Oh, okay. The text
because one of the texts said the hospital was destroyed, didn't it?
Oh, did it? Okay, the text was hard to read. They should have made some subtitles for that. I think, and then what did you feel about the very end shot where they're coming back to Earth A, and they're breaking through the cloud line, and the bigger Cloverfield monster than we've ever seen in any of the other movies before shows up.
Yeah.
Is that good? Is that bad? I don't.
I'll tell you what my immediate reaction was, wait, did it just eat the capsule?
Yeah.
Because it was so big.
Right.
How could it not have eaten the capsule?
But also, where, like, is it just now showing up? Yeah.
I mean, again, if it had been the spindly three-leg thing from Cloverfield in full view, I would have been blown away. I'd have been like, oh, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even the same monster, I don't think.
I don't, yeah, I'm not sure. Or if it was the alien sort of ship from the end of Cloverfield Lane, 10 Cloverfield Lane, maybe.
Right.
But that just looked like Godzilla.
Yeah. It was big frog monster head.
I think Jacqueline put it best in the show that movie would not have made any money if it got a theatrical release.
Yeah. I mean, granted, we're not taking her literally. Obviously,
sure.
Some people would have paid to go see it, but it would not have made a significant amount of money. It might not have made its budget back.
It's so bittersweet because I love the idea of Netflix just dropping movies on us. They're already like going
drop
super
the
quick.
mic and give us a blockbuster movie.
Yeah,
just because they can, right? I want them to do that. I do,
and I don't want it to be them saving something junky.
Yeah, and this felt like maybe people weren't confident, so they took this route.
It kind of
instead of making the point of Netflix is its own master.
It almost reminds me of Arrested Development, and you think of like where Arrested Development sits in the Netflix timeline as like, it was their first comedy original programming.
Yeah.
And it was them, saving a cult classic, which they went and did multiple times, and it's all right, but it's them dipping into waters they maybe can't execute in. I didn't see Wet Hot American Summer, so I don't know if something like that is a better indicator. But I look at this and I'm like, are you just trying to sell me on the name? And is that better or worse than if it's a theatrical release?
I mean, I think you have to remember too that Netflix has also done House of Cards. It has also done,
Sure.
Stranger Things. Like, they're good at TV, and because that's Ron Howard that did Arrested Development.
And Mitch, yeah.
It's the conditions, right? It's like, ooh, the only way we get the actors is if we do it this way. Let's try it. I don't know if that's so precedent setting for Netflix. Sure. Same way, I don't think this is precedent. I don't think this means Netflix can't get a blockbuster. It just didn't.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll just see. It's a weird time for science fiction. There's a lot of science fiction media coming out. But I don't know that it's all, A+ grade.
Yeah. Well, you got to throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall, and this was just noodles.
Space Getty.
Space Getty. Speaking of Space Getty, this actually takes place on Earth. Altered Carbon, episodes 1 and 2, we're going to talk about today. And as I've mentioned several times, a big fan of the books here. So I talked about on Cordkillers how excited I was for the moments from the book to happen. For him to walk into the AI hotel, even though they do a different take of it, for him to come out, into his sleeve, to get the flashbacks of him out fighting as an envoy. All of that stuff's been great, but it has felt lifeless to me. And I have had a really hard time putting my finger on why. And I think the book just has a little strain of humor to it that this series, they decided not to embrace.
Yeah. You were saying that he is supposed to be a Han Solo kind of, charismatic, roguish guy.
My take on Takeshi Kovacs in the book is that he's kind of he's a rogue. He's a ruffian. He's got a smirk. He and Ortega, I remember Ortega and him having a relationship that was friendly from the beginning. It was adversarial, but it was like, hey, if you weren't a cop and I wasn't working for this Bancroft guy, we'd probably be friends. But we're on other sides, and that and they move closer and closer as you see them do a little bit in these first 2 episodes, except they set it up in these 2 episodes as I'm going to naturally hate you because you're that and I'm this.
Yeah. He really doesn't. He feels like the opposite sort of character from, you know, how it sounds like you read him in the books. Like, I was watching these episodes and thought, he reminds me of The Witcher. He reminds me of Geralt from The Witcher, like a super ability possessing humanoid who is kind of devoid of emotions and excitement, and that's it makes for a good, you know, investigator, but there's gonna be have to be a lot of him in his whole ordeal.
One of the problems too is that a sleeve can have lots of enhancements. Mm-hmm. And one of the things about Kovach's sleeve that Bancroft gives him is, and they mention it in the first episode, it's got neurochem, you know, and all these enhancements. And that makes him a stone cold killer. And he can go into these neurochem moments where he's passionless and can just act. And there's a lot of that in the flashbacks in the book as well. Mm-hmm. To show that in TV is harder.
Yeah.
You can't talk about how the endorphins are rushing into him, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of deciding to show it in some other way, I think they just went and like, we'll just make him have low affect the whole time.
Yeah, well, because they make it seem, and I don't know if this tracks with the book or the rest of the series, that the what was the name of his people again? The
envoys.
The envoys. It made it seem like for some reason they had certain abilities, both like weird psychic abilities, or potentially like, you know, you could get into a sleeve and immediately be combat ready. And I read that as like a weird superhuman thing that just is ignored in a world where there's already weird superhero things.
There's a little bit of that. That's somewhat true. Like, there is a mental aspect of the envoys that gets preserved from sleeve to sleeve. It's all that they talk about it a lot. Oh, details. All I need is details. Yeah. And yes, he's 290 years in the future, so things have caught up with him since he was last around. But yeah, it's still confusing, and you don't care enough about anybody. I think Ortega is the only one that they're really doing a good job making you care about.
Yeah, you know, the scene with her mother in her apartment is not just humanizing, but really endearing to the type of person that she is, and you know, her upbringing and background, and the types of decisions that she makes, even when she's making, you know, bad decisions, like to use the tracker on Kochak.
The one thing that I love that they've done really well is the religious aspect. Yeah. That religious aspect of people saying, when you're dead, you're dead. You're robbing the spirit if you put people into new sleeves. One life, that's it. And I think the thing that was beautiful was that scene with the mother being constructed in a way that felt like every Hispanic mother scene in every TV show and movie ever, right? Except instead of just Catholicism, it was the sleeves and the sleeves, you know, yeah. and the code that lets them not take your stack and put it in a new sleeve. Mm-hmm. And it just made me on a visceral level understand, because, you know, I know what this scene is. Like, you shouldn't have premarital sex, and you know, you should live at home until you're ready to marry, and you shouldn't put your stack in a new sleeve. Like, yeah. It was like, oh, okay, so that's right in there with all of those things now.
That I love that sub plot that is occurring throughout the whole thing of the religious element, but I was very confused through these first 2 episodes of what exactly the current situation is, because they mentioned the 453 law, right, which I don't know whether that law passed or failed, and if that gave them what they wanted or didn't do, and what exactly it allows you to do and not to do. Yeah,
the only thing that they've really been clear about there, and honestly, I don't know how much of that you really need.
Okay.
But the mom says if you don't have your code, then you'll get re-sleeved.
Yeah.
And they have the right to have a code put in that says don't
no.
re-sleeve.
Okay.
It's like a DNR, do not resuscitate.
Okay, I just wasn't sure because they kept bringing it back up, which made me think.
Yeah.
I was supposed to have a better idea of what exactly the specifics were on that.
They may clarify that more later. I don't want to say too much because I can't remember what's actually been revealed and what hasn't, which is kind of the problem.
Yeah, and then so I think that's really good. I also don't have a sense. Do you get from the marketing and from the the whole explanation of re-sleeving the stacks or putting the stacks into new sleeves that everybody can re-sleeve, but then you get this huge disparity of wealth sort of theme of like, well, if you have money, you can re-sleeve a lot and into the bodies that you want, but maybe some people can't. I don't, and maybe that's something that's also going to get fleshed out more, but I feel really nebulous, a real nebulous grasp on that.
I see what you did there. It's going to get fleshed out.
Oh, I didn't even mean to do that one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, so they tell you when he's coming out of prison
that everyone has stacks.
Right, because there's the 6-year-old girl that got put in an old red-haired lady's sleeve, and they're like, "You get what the state has." Sorry. So there's like a social safety net of like everybody gets a sleeve. If you want to choose, you're gonna have to pay. But then there's the data broker whose daughter is being kept virtual. And I think that's not because he can't get her a sleeve, but he wants to cure her before he re-sleeves her.
I see. Okay. Because that was a big contributing element of like, well, why is he doing this? Just put her in a body and go from there.
Well, because she's crazy. And he's like, maybe I can fix her
before
in this virtual environment before I put her back in a body.
I see. I think I'm going to keep going with Altered Carbon at least a little bit to see kind of where it stands. I don't know how you're on episode 3 now, right? Yeah,
I think the big question now is whether Eileen keeps watching with me or a forge on ahead, because she's got mixed feelings. She's like, I like it. Episode 2 really lost her. It actually lost both of us about 3/4 of the way in. Just kind of felt like it just dragged once he shows up at the Jack shop.
Yeah.
But I felt like episode 3 picked back up again. So I'll be interested to see if it does for you too.
Yeah. That's right. Because I remember at the very end, I was trying to remember what the hell happened at the very end of this episode. It's him having sex with Bancroft's wife.
Yeah.
Because her sweat is LSD or something. And
yeah.
That's all right.
It's like an empathy drug so that everybody feels what everybody else is feeling. And
I see.
I'm so rich, I secrete it.
These plurs, man.
Yeah.
You want to talk about Counterpart?
Freaking meths. That's another thing is he calls them meths based on Methuselah in the book.
But meth is a word that we have.
He wrote it before meth was really commonly used as it is now. So that's really confusing when they talk about the meths. And I keep thinking like, dude, meth heads? That's weird. They're so rich. All right, let's finish up with Counterpart. This episode, we see his wife, Emily, come across into our world, from the Prime world into our world.
Right.
And that's because she is part of the inquiry team and ends up meeting with him, with
Prime,
Howard.
Silk Prime.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Howard just kind of goes on a trip to the jail to try to talk to Nadia and see if he can get any information out. Not much happens with him because he doesn't end up getting much out of her before they agree. We have this great negotiation scene where they agree to hand her over in exchange for where the oil is in the Marianas Trench and census records and stuff, which is a really nice little, once again, slice into the difference between the two worlds. And frankly, the biggest revelation for me world-wise was them saying, we had this pandemic we're still recovering from, and us saying, not our fault, we didn't do it.
Yeah. You watch that little movie trailer that shows up before that meet, and it's like, oh yeah, hey, get your inoculations,
inoculations. Don't want to get sick.
And make sure you report the sickies. Otherwise,
yeah, because herd immunity is very important in this world.
Man, it's I was really glad that they've started to flesh out the differences between these worlds, because that was something I was struggling with the first 2 episodes of like feeling really in limbo of what, like, just trying to have any concrete information on where they split up or the differences between these worlds, because clearly, there's also a technology difference between the world. They see the guy pull out an iPhone, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, because apparently their technology has not gone to that.
All their phones still have buttons.
Yeah,
they're translucent, but they have buttons.
It's or even just like the little things of like, oh, I don't eat shellfish from this side, because
I couldn't tell if that was a real thing or just him being a snot.
Sounds like him being a snot.
Yeah. Well, and then we get the little tidbit that we couldn't have sequenced the genome if we hadn't taken it from them.
Yeah, I wonder what they could possibly use census information for, or like they were talking in that meeting like, oh, well, they have the Hep C vaccine.
Yeah,
it's like, wow, there's something is happening here, and I'm ready for it.
What it is ain't exactly clear. I agree.
Yeah,
I love the pandemic thing because it really is. We can find out way more about it, and it won't change the fact from the minute they told me that maybe we did it, maybe we didn't. Yeah. Right? If planets diverge, there could be mutations in a virus that naturally caused a pandemic in Earth Prime that didn't happen here just by chance. Mm-hmm. Also, perfectly plausible that we decided to infect them to gain leverage over them and launched a virus there. That's possible too. It
raises the question of, if we could have done it, does that mean we split before the pandemic? Or did the pandemic was the pandemic at the catalyst point where they diverged? Is
that how did we save ourselves from the pandemic by splitting? That's an interesting thought.
Right. Oh, what if that's it? What if it's like, oh, something bad's gonna happen, let's flip a coin, and then suddenly you're playing friggin' Zero Escape. You've got multiple timelines. Okay.
There's an interesting scenario where you could say the scientists who created the split were actually trying to isolate the virus, right? And so they're like, what we can do is essentially isolate the virus into its own pocket universe, and it won't affect us. But instead of just isolating the virus, it actually created an entire other Earth where there's this pandemic. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And I'm still being kept along with the espionage element of just like, okay, there's a mole who is tracking us, and that's about, my sense is that's about as much as I need to know about that.
Yeah.
And
the spy game stuff is a little confusing for me sometimes because we don't know how the governments work. Yeah. One element of a spy situation is, all right, there's the government and there's the CIA and there's the FBI, and there's always the analogs of those three things in every spy movie, no matter what country it's in. We don't really know how the Earth Prime works. We don't even know how our version of this agency works. And so it's a little murky. So like you, I just sort of settle on like, there's a mole and we don't know what they want.
Yeah. I will say the shootout at the end where they intercept, what's her name? Cohen? Nadia. Where they intercept her. Really,
I guess that's not her prime name though. What's her prime name?
Her last name, Baldwin.
Yeah, Baldwin. I think that's right.
Where they steal her, like that really helped solidify this whole episode for me. Of like, okay, cool. There's another element at play, because not only are there two governments that we don't understand, we're also dealing with like an internal political strife in at least one of them that we already don't see much of. And having that simple thing of somebody wants her, somebody wants something to happen, and it's probably not any of the people that we've seen so far.
Right.
And
then Emily finds the letter that explains that Howard Prime was feeding information to real Emily, without real Howard knowing it. And then immediately Emily Prime gets killed via pin in her light switch.
Okay. So it was real Emily's letter to Howard Prime.
Yes.
I see. Okay, I mean that makes sense, right? There's a lot of
because the letter says Howard doesn't know anything about this.
That's right.
Please take care of him, which explains all this weird obsession where Howard Prime has been like, he comes with me, let him in on it. Like, oh, okay, he's trying to fulfill his word to Emily Prime or Emily Real.
And I wonder if Emily Prime is dead or if she's also in a coma.
I thought she was dead.
It seems dead.
And then her eyes twitched. And I'm like, now I don't know.
Because I think that would be really good cover for Howard Prime to say, I know I said she died, but look, she's in a coma. It's tough for me too. Where
also I'm swapping the Emily I don't get along with for the one that used to feed me information. You'll never know. It's fine.
Oh my gosh. I'm ready. I like watching it. I felt like this is a confused mess, but talking this out with you made me like really understand and enjoy just as much as we've gotten so far, a lot more.
Yeah, same here actually. It's all starting to gel. So Counterpart, who knew? It's one of my favorite new shows. I actually get excited about watching it. So stop putting Super Bowl stunts on TV on Sunday and making me run out of time.
Yeah, that's right. Gosh, I wish I had more time just for everything this week.
Yeah. Well, we will have more time for you next week, and Brian Brushwood will be back then. So please join us then. And of course, continue to support us so we can keep doing these shows at patreon.com/Cordkillers. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye, guys.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.